Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Stombach, Child Nutrition Consultant with the Maine Department of Education's Child Nutrition Program, and welcome to our monthly webinar series. Today we are going to focus on local wellness policy requirements. Attached you will find a handout called Does Your Wellness Policy Measure Up? To assist schools with updating their wellness policies to be in compliance. During today's webinar, all attendees have been placed on mute. This webinar is being recorded so you can view it at any time after the live webinar, and certificates of attendance will be posted on the last slide of this presentation. You may screenshot or print the slide depending on the format you're using to view the presentation. Now let's get started with our presentation today. All right. Now let's start with the local wellness policy timeline. As a result of the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act of 2004, each local educational agency, or LEA, that participates in the National School Lunch Program was required by federal law to establish a local school wellness policy for all schools under its jurisdiction. Then in 2010, when the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act took effect, it included new provisions, including an emphasis on implementation, evaluating, and publicly reporting on progress. In school years 2011 through 2016, school districts were working towards implementing the new requirements. And then fast forward to school year 2017, USDA released the final rule, and all LEAs are to be compliant with the final wellness policy rule by June 30th of 2017. Before we get into the required elements of the wellness policy, let's talk about local wellness policies and how they relate to administrative reviews. Local wellness policies are a general area we look at during administrative reviews, which are conducted every 3 years in each school district. We assess local wellness policy compliance through questions on the off-site assessment tool that gets sent to us as part of the off-site procedures of the review, as well as supporting documentation such as the wellness policy itself and the steps that have been taken regarding implementation, public input, and availability of the wellness policy. Just a reminder that state agencies are not required to evaluate the quality of the wellness policy goals, but to assess that they contain the required elements. We will talk more about administrative reviews as they relate to wellness policies later in this webinar. So now we're going to move into the local wellness policy required components. Each wellness policy must include measurable goals for nutrition education, nutrition promotion, physical activity, other school-based activities to promote student wellness. It must also include the following: nutrition standards for all foods sold, such as Smart Snack standards, nutrition guidelines for foods available, however not sold, such as food rewards and classroom parties. It must address food and beverage marketing, and there is specific language to use for this, which we will discuss a little bit later in the presentation. Permit involvement from a variety of people, such as teachers, parents, and students, among others. Designate leadership, so who is going to ensure the wellness policy is being followed. It must also inform the public on the content and implementation. And lastly, include a triennial assessment, which would include progress towards meeting the goals of the wellness policy. So this is a lot, as you can tell. So let's break it down by each area. One of the required elements includes having goals for nutrition education. This can include, but is not limited to, classroom-based nutrition education, such as nutrition-specific curriculum, and other community partners doing nutrition education in the classroom. It could also include cafeteria education, such as USDA MyPlate information, and other education materials in the cafeteria. Having nutrition education be part of food service staff training, such as scratch cooking, reducing sodium, and preparing fresh fruits and vegetables, are some ideas of food service training. And sending nutrition information home to parents, or holding nutrition education events for the community, such as wellness fairs and other events. These are some ideas for incorporating nutrition education goals into the wellness policy. Next, we're going to discuss goals for nutrition promotion. Goals for nutrition education and promotion are interrelated and can overlap. Some ideas include conducting contests, surveys, or taste testing to promote new menu choices, having adequate time for meals, promoting nutrition in the cafeteria environment, such as on bulletin boards and other signage, having the healthier options prominently displayed and also displayed in an appetizing way, and by utilizing smarter lunchroom strategies. Keep in mind when developing goals that they must be measurable. Another component that needs to be included are goals for physical activity. So here are some examples of goals to meet this requirement. They include daily recess, for example, not withholding recess as punishment, having physical activity breaks during the day to give the students a break from instructional time and to refocus, recess before lunch, after school access to school facilities, walk bike to school, such as the walking school bus that some districts have participated in, and also walk-a-thon or other clubs. The last required component that involves goals is called other activities to promote student wellness. This may include farm-to-school activities, such as utilizing school garden produce in the school cafeteria, buying from local farms, or taking students on field trips to local farms. This may also include recognition and awards programs such as Smarter Lunchrooms, which we already talked about. Fuel Up to Play 60, where students are involved in developing plays that promote nutrition education and physical activity in the school. This may also include access to drinking fountains, including water bottle filling stations in the school, which is becoming more common, utilizing staff as role models, or other ways to promote staff wellness. The second element involves setting standards for all foods available on the school campus. This includes foods sold and also foods available or not sold. So all school meals must meet federal guidelines, and Smart Snacks is a standard for all foods sold during the school day on the school campus. This includes a la carte, fundraisers, school stores, as well as other areas where food is sold. As a caution, we are finding that a lot of wellness policies refer to policy EFE, or a separate competitive foods policy that includes information on Chapter 51, which is a state law. Please note that this information is outdated and needs to be removed from the wellness policy. The federal Smart Snacks rule is the current law for all foods sold. Now let's talk about nutrition standards for all foods available. This applies to things such as classrooms or school celebrations, using non-food rewards, classroom snacks, and rewards and incentives. Guidelines for these types of activities would need to be included in the wellness policy. For example, having a healthy snack list available for classroom parties. Food and beverage marketing must be addressed in the wellness policy, and this must meet Smart Snacks requirements as well. As another caution, this is the most common component that gets left out of the wellness policy that we have found during administrative reviews. The food and beverage marketing applies to things such as scoreboards, vending machines, coolers, as well as signage around the school. The Maine state statute has specific language that can be incorporated into the wellness policy. This language can be found on the Child Nutrition website on the link provided on your screen. So be sure to check that out. The local wellness policy requires that members of the general public and school community be allowed to participate in the policy process. Here are a list of stakeholders that can be involved to help develop, implement, and review the wellness policy. If you do not already have a student on your team, consider recruiting one to get their input on wellness topics from a student perspective and what they would like to see. Another component of the wellness policy is to designate one school official to be responsible for the oversight of the wellness policy. Typically, this is the superintendent or designee, but it could be for anyone, or it could be anyone that can be involved in ensuring the wellness policy is being followed. For example, building principals. So it can be more than just one person. Notifying the public is about improving the transparency of the wellness policy and to keep the public updated on implementation and compliance. There are multiple ways to communicate this, including on the school or district website, school handbook, newsletters, or school board meetings. Look at this as a chance to toot your own horn. Tell the community about all the great things you are doing to promote wellness. And lastly, schools are required to evaluate compliance and progress made in attaining the goals of the wellness policy. Is the school following through on what the policy says? Are the goals being met? This is why it's important to include measurable goals, so when the time comes to assess the policy, this process is easier. An assessment of the wellness policy must be completed every 3 years at a minimum. As far as what records are needed to document compliance, schools would need to keep the following: documentation demonstrating compliance with community involvement, or the methods of how the community was informed that they could participate in the local wellness policy. For example, an announcement during school board meetings or information posted in school newsletters. Documentation of the Triennial Assessment and that it actually happened. Documentation of public notification, such as a website address or school board meeting minutes. Those are some ways to document the public was notified. Now here is more information on the administrative review process and the questions asked on the offsite assessment tool regarding the wellness policy. These questions must be answered by the SFA or School Food Authority, otherwise known as the school district. I will give you a moment to look over the questions before moving to the next slide. Now, this is the state agency process. We will review the policy to ensure the required elements are included. Corrective action is needed if there is anything missing that we discussed earlier. The policy would then need to be revised and the final approved version submitted to the reviewer in order for the corrective action of the wellness policy to be complete. The review would remain open until the policy is approved by the school board. And we understand that the policy review and approval process can take time, so we are realistic of time frames given to fulfill this corrective action. There are some resources available that can help make this process easier. First, we have adopted a checklist to assist school districts with updating their wellness policy, which is the handout provided in today's webinar. The checklist will identify which elements are missing from the current wellness policy. Another resource that is available to schools is Maine School Management Association's, or MSMA, Sample Wellness Policy. This can be used as a template and customized to meet your district's needs. Now that you've been trained on the wellness policy requirements, where do you go from here? The first step is assembling a school wellness committee, if you don't already have one, and determining the following: who is on your wellness team, who is working to revise the wellness policy, who else do you need to recruit to involve all stakeholders. The second step is, what does the current policy say? Does it address all the required areas by using the checklist provided? Step 3 is revising the local wellness policy to address the missing areas. The next steps would be school board approval and implementation. And lastly, monitoring progress and reporting the results of the most recent assessment. This concludes our monthly webinar. This last slide is your certificate of attendance for viewing this webinar. You may enter 0.5 hours of training. You will want to print this slide and save it for your professional standards documentation. So now we will see if anyone has any questions. And at this time, if anyone has questions, feel free to enter them into the question box. I'll just wait a few moments. Okay, I am sensing none. But if anyone has questions as a result of this webinar, or at any point regarding wellness policies, please feel free to reach out to anyone in our office, and we will do our best to assist you. So please use us as a resource as well. So thank you all for your time today. I hope this webinar was helpful, and enjoy the rest of your day.